lawyers and say, look, what do we need to do to make sure that those pests like Martyn and Paul are not on our backs in the future, and that hopefully changes their behaviour. So I'd be very surprised in some ways if it didn't. Quite the extent of it is really the issue as to whether it's seriously different or just marginally different. And in terms of the South Africa-Israel thing, I've got nothing more to say than Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience. We'll take all 4 questions, and since I'm already in the bad books of Chris and Chris for running over time, can you be short?
I'll try and be. My name is Carol Lee, and I'm a journalist and an author, and it's in those capacities that I listened to the Reith lectures this year, given by Michael Sandel, the Professor of Justice at Harvard, and he explained how we are moving from a market economy towards a market society, and his comment was, and this will be followed by my question, that there are some things that money can't buy, and there are some things that money should not be allowed to buy. In that context, I'd like to ask you both something about what Martyn said in particular about the shortage of lawyers with a mind to take on human rights and issues of humanity rather than the corporate kind whom I've met a lot of. And I want to ask if there are any moves afoot or if there is anything that can be done to encourage more pests.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabriela Quijano, and I work in Amnesty International. And my question was especially to Martyn Day for a comment that he made regarding that the ideal scenario would be that these type of cases get resolved in the states where the abuses occur. And my question was if when we're talking about actions and decisions that may have been taken by a parent company in the state where they are headquartered, and most of the elements to judge on fault are located in that state, where the cases don't properly belong in the home state, where the company is headquartered. And my question comes from the reality that maybe even if there's a perfectly functioning judiciary system in a developing country, the case might still have to be resolved in the home state, and the judiciary might still struggle to hold the parent company to account. Thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Stefan Lehne from the LSE Human Rights Program, and I have a hard time understanding how these corporate decisions are made. I'm sure the companies we're talking about have all incredibly intelligent managers. Are these decision makers just evil, or is it poor project analysis, or why are they doing what they're doing? What is your personal opinion?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mayada Shakur. I'm a solicitor with Henderson Global Investors. That's just my day job. I'm not here representing them. My question is, how big a role has alternative dispute resolution or mediation played in any of the cases you've been involved to date in the pre-litigation stages? And do you see dialogue playing a bigger role in future, given perhaps corporate attitude changes due to fear of litigation or naming and shaming? Thank you.
Thank you. Martyn, your turn to start.
All right, just going from the bottom upwards. Mediation, I'm a big fan of mediation. What didn't used to be, but in more recent times have become so. What I really like about mediation is it involves the clients, it involves them in the process, it involves them in the resolution. In the Baha Mousa case, where the dad of Baha Mousa was involved in the mediation that we had last year with the Ministry of Defence, the most fabulous part of that mediation at a time when they were all feeling totally depressed by what the process and the rest of it was that the British Army brought, it's from the number 2 or number 3, personally in all of his regalia, as brigadier, and he gave the most fabulous apology to the family and particularly to Colonel Mousa. And you felt that they could have shackles and moved from his shoulders, that he felt at long last he'd been able to get a proper apology for what had happened. Obviously compensation as well helped, but I think the actual apology in itself was as significant as anything else that happened. You'd never get that in the court. You know, the court process is very different. So for me, I think there are times when mediation is very important. I'm a strong believer in it. I feel that I've been pressing John Ruggie to encourage it more in terms of having some sort of an international forum for mediation, so that where companies can be encouraged to do so, that they would go forward on that front. But so I'm a big supporter. Secondly, in terms of whether companies are evil or not, I think largely not. You know, obviously you get some bastards, as you do in anything, but for me, mainly, I think that they're simply driven by the idea that they're making profit, and why would they get into compensating people unless they absolutely have to? And as the point I was making earlier, it's our job and society's job to make sure that we're putting the pressure on them, that we are the ones who are actually forcing them to actually face up to what they do. So I don't think they're evil, but they're often misguided. Thirdly, in terms of the what can money buy and the encouragement, again, I was at a UN meeting the other day where Ruggie was speaking, and there was a big debate about this, about the importance of actually more lawyers, not in the US and the UK, which to a degree have some lawyers already involved, but as much more in the developing world, that lawyers be encouraged to come forward in the developing world who'd be interested in trying to have some forum where you encourage developing world lawyers themselves to be interested and prepared to take this on. Happens in South Africa. Both of us work quite closely with a number of South African lawyers. Happens in India, but there are very few other jurisdictions, I think, where you get lawyers of this sort. And there was one other point, but I can't read my own writing.
Of you, and it was about being resolved in state versus being held in account in home country.
Sorry, say that again?
Your point about that it is best that these cases be resolved
in
Muslim country, but how do you hold them to account?
Well, for me, that's a very important way forward. You know, I think if we could be in a position where that can be resolved, then that would be great. The issue about parent company accountability, often the reason we sue parent companies is because either subsidiary has gone bust, or has disappeared, or the subsidiary is in a jurisdiction where it's very difficult to pursue. So often that would be the reason why we go after the parent company. But there are good instances where it is, it is, even if you were able to sue in both jurisdictions, that the parent company is the better company to sue, whether that's because of compensation, whether it's because of the jurisdictional position or whatever it might be. But I think it doesn't detract from my fundamental point that if, in an ideal world, these cases would be brought in their home states.
And Paul, you're between the refreshments and people.
Okay. Well, I'm unaware of any organized effort to create more pests. The hope that I have is that the tremendous interest among law students in the United States and in international human rights clinics in the United States is building a new generation of people that will be interested in it more so than in the Paleolithic days when I went to law school. I think.
What did that mean?
It means I'm old. I think that it is important to get at the parent companies. In my experience, the parent companies usually control what's going on. That's been my experience in almost all the cases. With the reality of control is with the parents. Why do they do it? I'm not in the inherently evil school of corporate accountability, I suppose, but I think they do it for money. I think they do it for profit. I think they do it because they can get away with it, and that's the problem. I mean, I think that's the heart of the problem. In terms of mediation and dialogue, as long as they can get away with it, they're not going to mediate or have a dialogue, basically. And so I think that if we're able to establish a framework in which companies will be found liable and will have to pay, then they're going to start to have more mediation and dialogue. Although we're seeing some of that more in some cases. I mean, there have been some offers recently by oil companies, for example, to mediate with indigenous groups that we have not seen before. And so it's possible that that's already starting to happen a little, but it's only very little at this point.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Martyn. And thank you all for your great questions and interaction. I'm going to come back to Chris.